Hi guys, so before we get into it, a quick disclaimer that there will be spoilers today, but I don't think it will affect your enjoyment of the movie. So this was directed by a guy called Mark Buntzman. You might remember him from such films as Suicide Cult and Love Kills, but I only tend to watch his stuff when I'm feeling a little bit down and I need a pick-me-up. So I reviewed Exterminator 1 the other week. I didn't particularly enjoy watching that film, but I was looking forward to covering the second one regardless, because this is the one I watched back when I was a kid. I rented it from a video store with my dad, and I've been trying to narrow down how old I would have been when this occurred. Best I can figure, I would have been about 11, so this is a rewatch that has been a long time in the making because I'm 44 now, and honestly, when I had this on the other night, I could really feel the weight of all those years on my shoulders because the world has changed a hell of a lot since my first viewing of Exterminator 2. I've changed a hell of a lot, but leaving all nostalgia aside, the second one is a much more palatable film for me anyway. The first one is kind of like an exploitation, torture porn, street horror, whereas this one is more like a mid to low budget 80s action film in the Death Wish mould, but using flamethrowers. And one thing that stuck out like a sore thumb for me watching number 2 is that they were actually using stuntmen being set on fire. Like it's very rare these days. In fact, I'm not even sure they do that at all these days. But when I was watching this as an 11-year-old, I doubt it would have even occurred to me that that was a weird thing, because it was just normal in the 80s to have stuntmen on fire. But the other night watching this, I was like, wow, that's actually a human being under those flames. That's incredible. I kind of feel the same when I'm watching the Maniac Cop films, because they have lots of people on fire in them, but they're doing it the old-fashioned way, and it looks so cool now. You see, this is why I didn't really love The Expendables when it came out. I mean, the first one, because it was marketed as this big return to 80s action filmmaking. But they were clearly using CGI for any scene that involved somebody on fire, and it was kind of like, well, it's not a proper return to 80s cinema then, is it? But I digress. Getting back to the Exterminator 2, so to give you an idea of the plot for this, well, the first thing to say is that there is actually a plot, unlike the original film, which was more like a series of vigilante vignettes. Like, the Exterminator would go after one group of villains in the first act, and then he'd move on to a completely different group of villains, and then another group. There wasn't a consistent through line running through the narrative. There wasn't one big villain you could hang your hat on, but that's different in number 2. In the second one, there's just one gang covering the whole film. It's led by somebody called X, and I kind of wonder if the makers of the Streets of Rage games from the 90s just stole this guy's name for their own ends, but it could just be a coincidence. But yeah, the Exterminator's got to try and take down this gang because they are very dangerous. Their goal is to take over the city. They're getting into cocaine and all this stuff, and the only man who can stop them is the Exterminator. This movie had a troubled production. After the filming had wrapped, they realised that they would have to go back and shoot a load of additional scenes because they were restructuring the film, kind of, and they had to rejuggle the finances for the whole thing. The main actor was only available for like half the shoot, supposedly, and I think this is why they came up with the idea of putting the welder's mask on him and turning him into a flamethrower-only character, because that way they could just use a stuntman for like a lot of the action scenes. But if that's the case, I think it was a happy accident, because this whole concept is just so much better to me when the Exterminator has a signature weapon. It's a bit like in Friday the 13th. In the third one, somebody on set randomly came up with the idea of putting a hockey mask on Jason, and at the time it probably just felt like they were throwing mud at the wall and hoping it would stick. But it turned out to be one of the best decisions in horror movie history. And had the Exterminator gone on to be a more successful franchise with like 4 or 5 movies, I think we'd all be looking back on the second one and saying that's the one where they had a lucky break with the whole welder's mask thing. We get to see a bit more of the human side of the Exterminator in this one. So he gets a friend who doesn't die in the first 5 minutes, and also a lover, therefore proving that he does have a pulse. The friend is a local garbage man, and the lover is a stripper. And I think the film is trying to say with this that the Exterminator is a very down-to-earth guy. He'll hang out with anybody, kind of a thing. He doesn't stand on ceremony. At one point, he goes clubbing with the garbage guy, and they actually go out in the garbage truck. Who has ever done this in the history of mankind? Gone to a nightclub via parking up outside in a garbage truck. And when it comes time to go home, the exterminator has met up with his lover at this point, and he takes her home in the garbage truck. Can you imagine, whenever a woman picks up a guy in a club and she agrees to go to a hotel with him or back home with him, on the way out of the club, she'll probably think, oh, please let this guy have a Porsche or a Lamborghini. That would be really cool. And then it turns out to be a garbage truck. Like, oh my God. But luckily, such is the animal magnetism of the exterminator, the garbage truck does not prove to be a barrier to him getting some action, so that's good. Although this romance throughout the film, I think it's meant to be like a big thing for our main lead, potentially even a life partnership. But when they have a sex scene, it's filmed in kind of a sleazy way, which is a little bit at odds with what the script is trying to do with the romance otherwise. That's how I felt about it. And later on, when it comes time for the villains to attack the woman so that the exterminator therefore has his motivation for the finale, all they do is break one of her legs and kick her a few times. And other than that, she's all right. They don't even kill her. If somebody's going to start burning people alive with a flamethrower, I feel like they kind of have to be properly motivated. So do it. Just go the full way. Kill the girlfriend. It's not like she's a brilliant character. I've got mixed feelings when it comes to X, the villain. For some reason, he's dressed like a villain from Masters of the Universe. And near the beginning, he does this ludicrous speech in front of his lackeys where he's trying to G them up. But he's acting in a really animated way, like his eyes are about to burst blood vessels at any moment. He's speaking a bit like this. It's like, we're going to take over it all. It's all going to be ours, the whole city. Nobody's going to stop us. But there's nothing of substance in anything that he's saying. He's not saying why he wants to do this, how he's going to do this. He's just saying that he is going to do this with the help of his lackeys, and they're lapping it up. Like at the end of every sentence, they're like, yeah! This villain, there were times when I found him to be a bit of a scary dude throughout the movie, but there are other moments where the film really does him a disservice. Firstly with that speech, and then in the finale as well. So at the end of this film, the Exterminator and X have this long-running duel in a factory. X has got his Uzi and the Exterminator's got his flamethrower, and they're going to run around, play hide and seek, and see who can kill the other one first. And it's kind of good for the most part. There are a couple of moments, though, that stand out to me as being a little bit bad. So X has a clear chance to shoot the Exterminator and doesn't take it, and I don't really know why. And there's this other moment where Exterminator finds himself on this balcony looking down, and he can see X sort of moving around, hiding behind poles and things, moving around with his gun. And the way that the camera angle is set up, it just makes X look like some guy playing Laser Quest. It looks really cheap and shit in that moment. But I do like the explosion that finishes things off. This is something that I remember very distinctly from when I watched this film as a kid. The explosion is brilliant, and the way that the flaming body falls down is really cool, as is the way that the Exterminator walks off into the light just before the end credits, and he drops his equipment behind him because the implication is that he's done with that life now, and therefore there probably won't be an Exterminator 3, which there wasn't. But I've been wondering over the last sort of 24 hours or so whether somebody could come along and reboot this or do a belated part 3 just for nostalgia's sake. But I don't think we will ever see that because they would presumably have to use fire CGI, and I think that would put them off. There's also the moral thing of, should we really be having a protagonist who burns people alive? They were clearly willing to do it for this movie in the 80s, but I don't know whether somebody would dig this thing up now after all these years. So I think this is destined to stay a relic of a bygone era, and maybe that's for the best. But when I look back on Exterminator as an older man, as a really old man, I think it will be part 2 that I look back on that gives me a little bit of a smile. It certainly won't be number 1. So we've reached that point where we go to the bag of terror, so I can show you how I'm going to score this movie. So here's the bag. Let's see what we've got inside. We have got 1, 2, 3 Michael Myers carving knives out of 5. So a good movie, I suppose. This is a higher score than the 2 out of 5 that I gave the original movie. So there we go. I have covered Exterminator 1 and 2. We can definitely move on from this now. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you all again next time. Bye-bye.